You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of ZESTY Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
Hi there, it's Alex. I'm here for a short solo podcast today. Although I always say that and then I always talk forever, so bear with me if it's longer. But today I wanted to keep on going with our woo that you've heard from me for the last couple episodes. And today specifically, I wanted to talk about picking up on emotions that are not yours. So this is a topic, obviously, there's some people that are going to hear this and be like, well, that doesn't make sense. I just have my own emotions, right? And there's some of us who are very intimately aware of how much you're picking up on other people's emotions, right? So there's a really wide spectrum here. However, I'd like to bring up some analogies and ways of thinking about this topic that I have found really helpful as one of the people that is very sensitive to other people's energies and can easily pick up on people's emotions. So, from a kind of living life standpoint, this is a really impactful thing that I have unpackaged in my own life, because I think for those of us who do tend to pick up other people's emotions and feel them, it really impacts the quality of life and how every single day tends to go, right? So unless you're completely alone, that may help, but even then remotely you can kind of pick up on people's emotions. At least some of us can. And then there's other folks who are picking up other people's emotions, but because they're not identified as someone else's emotions, then what our brain does, which is totally normal, just makes up the narrative that explains why you're having the emotion. And for the most part, any one of us can have 1,010 things to explain any sort of emotion. And really, mostly this happens when it's negative, right? Because if we pick up on someone's joy and happiness, cool, we're grooving. If we pick up on someone's shame and guilt and jealousy and neediness, for the most part, we want to either figure out why that's happening, right? Do something about it, fix it. And when the narrative that you create in your own head is something about you and it's someone else's emotions that you're picking up, it gets really murky, right? So there's a lot to this topic in terms of how it presents, but there is benefit to being able to sense other people. And I think remotely and close up, we do this all the time, right? So for those of you who maybe haven't thought about this as much, the example that I use is like when you walk into a room and you can immediately sense that the two people have been fighting, right? Part of it's are the unspoken things like body language and how they're standing, how they're looking at one another. But then there's also emotions and kind of an energetic feel to the room, or if someone's really angry or if someone's really anxious, right? And then remotely, a lot of times the people that we are closest to, we are connected to them whether we are right next to them or not, right? I have my younger sister who's turning 17 soon. uh, love her more than anything, and no matter where she is, I feel her, right? From just being her sister and really loving her and being connected to her. And there's different ways of thinking about what that can be, whether, energetically or that kind of thing. But most of us can agree that the people that are, especially the most important to us, and it's a spectrum from there on out, we can access information about them, whether they're right next to us or they're not. And so when it comes to picking up people's emotions, oftentimes what I find is that when I take on someone's emotion, whether they're close to me or not, is generally a fairly abrupt change. And I can't necessarily explain it with the narrative of my own life, right? So if all of a sudden I feel sad, but I was cruising along doing something totally normal, feeling fine, and all of a sudden, bam, here it goes, then generally speaking, it starts to alert me and has me asking, is this emotion actually mine, right? Most of the time, what emotions do for us is give us information, right? So if it's information about ourselves, cool, because it's ours. Picking up on someone else's emotions can also give us information about ourselves, right? The way that we respond and react to things, also cool. It can also give us information about where the other person is at. And that can be very handy as well, right? That's the living from sense, because we can discount all of this stuff and say, well, they're just going to tell me how they feel. And of course, there's nothing that replaces open and honest, good communication. However, that when we have other forms of data, it just gets added to the data pool. It's not discounting the rest of it, or it's not superseding it. It just is more data coming in. So when I pick up on Megan's emotions, right, and we live clear across the country from each other, when that happens, it helps me support or be a good partner and friend and lifelong bestie to Megan, but it also gives me information about me. The deal is, though, is that this is where I had an analogy kind of come to me that I thought really helped me classify how I think about this, because when it comes to emotions, they're fairly strong, right? They're strong in the way that they hit us, especially negative ones. And like I said, it's almost immediate that our brain registers the feeling and the emotion and begins to create a story. And because we're humans the way that we are, we're generally focused on ourselves. And so when that happens, it can really throw us in for a loop. And so I was thinking, like, what is the kind of big picture look at getting information from being able to sense things that are not just directly told to us, like emotions, versus really being impacted by them in a negative way that actually takes away from our own peace, internal quiet, our sense of guidance, all of that, right? Because if it's working for us, great, there's no problem there. When it doesn't, though, which routinely tends to happen for people, they're like, my husband came home, he was in a crummy mood, or he was working with a bunch of people who were angry. He comes home, all of a sudden, boom, I'm angry for no reason. Now we're getting into a fight when there's no, that was the impetus for it. It's not necessarily a problem that we are having, right? So that's where it's good to be able to differentiate. And from just getting an understanding of it, it made a lot of sense to me when I thought about it being like listening to the radio or having music on. There is a difference in the impact from music when we can hear music, realize that it's on, and then we make the decision to, like, oh, hey, I'm going to do the dishes while the radio's on, right? So we're registering the music, we acknowledge the music, we're not pretending like it's not on. We can hear it, and we essentially say, this music will be the backdrop to whatever it is that I'm doing, right? And so that's the experience of registering an emotion, recognizing that we are feeling it, getting whatever it is that is bringing to us, having that experience, but essentially just keeping on going with our general life and whatever we're choosing to do in the moment. The flip side of that, the opposite, is when you hear music, you're like, I love this song, and you stop everything that you're doing, belt it out loud, really feel it, and you got tears streaming down your face, right? Very different music listening experience. And I think a lot of us that feel emotions strongly, whether it's ours or someone else, when it's someone else's that comes on and it hits us, right? It's all of a sudden we get really looped in. That's the experience where we're really choosing to engage with it and really give all of our time and attention to it. Now, neither one is bad, right? Neither one, because there's a benefit to when something hits you really hard. If it really knocks you off kilter, I won't say 100% of the time, because I don't know that that's true, but for the vast majority of the time, there's something to be gleaned from that experience. And so we may choose at one time or another to belt out that song. But ideally, when it comes to picking up on other people's emotions, that we would want to consciously choose what experience we want to have, right? Do we want to go into it and really feel that, or is now not the time to be doing that, right? We can say, hey, I'm going to use Megan as an example because it's easy, right? Hey, Megan is having this experience. What is that telling me? What is it that I can do? But do I really want to have it impact me, my experience right in this moment? And let's say I'm serving a patient at that time, right? Or working with someone, that may not be the best time to do it. And so having the choice is then really, really helpful for just navigating the emotions, because whatever they come as or whatever you choose to do with them, it's all good 100% of the time. But when it's not a choice, that's where we feel unhappiness and unease about it. That kind of catapults me then into, well, how do you navigate the actual onset? So one thing that I have started to really get in the habit of, and right, habits are just brain-based practices, and getting into the habit of when I feel an emotion, especially when it comes on suddenly and strongly, that's my cue. And let me back up for a second. Usually experiences cue us to do something, right? Because for the most part, if all of us were trained to feel an emotion, sit down and really feel it, we would have a lot fewer problems with emotions. But that's not what we're taught to do. We're generally conditioned to, I feel sad, I do something that makes me feel better, right? So there's already that internal cue. Now, is that ideal? No, but I actually think that it can be used to our advantage, because when you feel uncomfortable and you feel that, like, I want to do something about it and resolve it, that's actually the cue that I built in, right? The one that when I feel that way, I want to escape this. That's when my next thought, and I had to practice this, is this emotion or feeling mine? Or is it something that I'm picking up? Sometimes the answer is both, but for the most part, I end up finding that it's one or the other. Then from that question, everything else really kind of rolls down the hill, because once we have the awareness of, is this mine or not, then the next awareness of, are we going to really believe this and go on a hunt for what is the narrative that's creating this, and really that's the listening to the music, getting really into it, singing along, that kind of stuff? Or is this one of those where it's like, hey, that's not mine, okay, I'm going to acknowledge it, thank it for what it's showing me right now, and move through it. And that can be, sometimes I'll do a little neutral reset, watching a funny YouTube video, or doing a little dance party. You've probably heard Megan and I talking about this. Whatever it is that sort of allows the emotion, and that's where people say energy and motion for a moment, right? It moves the energy a little bit, going for a walk, having something to drink, what, stepping outside, standing in the sun for 2 minutes. It doesn't matter as long as you're just sort of doing what feels good to you, and then going along with your day. And as it comes up, sometimes it will, and just that's when I, for myself, acknowledge, hey, this is, something I'm picking up. There's nothing wrong. Nothing as bad has happened, right? All of these things that I'm essentially self-soothing myself and just really allowing it to pass until the time has come to either address it in a more serious way. If emotions are really hanging out, obviously there's lots of emotional processing tools out there, and that isn't the point of this podcast episode. Or it just works itself out, and that's cool, right? So the takeaway here is, when we feel that really intense emotion, when we're getting into it, then that's where we stop and we ask ourselves, is this ours? Right? And then based off the answer and what your goals are for that moment, then we can start to strategize in terms of working it out. Maybe that can be just even reaching out to the person if that's the kind of relationship that you have. Sometimes that doesn't make sense, right? Like when I walk through the hospital, I pick up all sorts of stuff. And that is where I really, this will be hopefully another podcast topic, is protecting and shielding yourself from picking up other people's energies, thought forms, and emotions. And that is a little more specialized than this, because that's actively taking steps to shield yourself. It's even a little more woo on the scale of crunchiness for that. So my last thought for you, or my question for you, is, do you want a podcast episode about that? Because it probably won't be applicable to quite as many people, because many people aren't aware of the energies and the emotions that they're picking up. And when it's not relevant to us, we're often not at the place to, really care to do that kind of long-term tangible work. But those of us who really do feel it a lot, especially when we work in environments with other humans where there's a lot of interaction, retail, therapy, healthcare, what's that? Hospitality, right, where you're always interacting with people. If we're constantly picking things up, and you know that about yourself, that's where I'd be speaking to in terms of what do I do. And that can be anything from intentionality, right? Intentionally protecting your energetic space, because your energetic space is 100% under your purview, right? We get to absolutely use our power, will, and intention to have whatever experience in our energetic space that we want to have. Right? Things can happen around us and come at us, but the energetic impact of whatever that is determined by us. We have complete sovereignty over that. And so that's a topic that I can speak to. And then there's very kind of practical things that some people will do that I've picked up over the years, because I really was impacted by hospital work. I mean, that's everything from like wearing certain stones, right, as necklaces or whatever. It also, especially if you're not as much in the energy belief world, right? I mean, even something like a necklace can anchor you, right? Even if you don't believe that the stone itself is doing anything, which is fine. whatever what people want to believe is cool. But, we can use things like that as anchors of saying, when I feel this way, I touch this necklace that I have, I remind myself, of XYZ, and I move on with my life. Or the, crystals and stuff like that, wearing certain colors. I mean, I've really gone down the rabbit hole here because I was literally to the point where I was like, I will do anything and everything to sort of begin to protect my space, because I can't live a life that I'm so impacted by other people's stuff coming into my space. I don't want that kind of experience of life. Therefore, I'm going to figure out how to not have that. And so if that is a topic that interests you, please, please, please tag us on social media. Just like screenshot this episode and tag us, and our team will compile all of those and just let me know that you all are interested. And I'm happy to do a second episode kind of as a continuation of this topic to share some of those tools that I have learned about. And there'll be a couple, because I think in each scenario, different things can apply, and for each person, it becomes even more individualized, right? So I can go into all of that. Just please let me know if you are interested or not. So in either case, to wrap up this episode, any emotion that comes on super strong that has you wondering what the heck happened, ask if it's yours or not, right? And then from there on out, really take action in the way that most supports the type of experience you want to have. And from there, you're going to use your sense on what that is. And there's going to be some trial and error over time that teaches you which is going to work for each scenario the best for you. Right? And then that's why I can't share that. It's going to be different for each person. And then from that feedback that you get, depending on how it went, then that's the springboard for the new, right? And the next time it happens, it becomes a different thing. We're more equipped, we're well versed. All of that can happen a little more easily. Now, are there still days where I get knocked over by someone's energy and I have, I can't even tell really up from down where it's coming from? Yeah, definitely. But even just the awareness of this isn't mine allows me to have a little more space from it, and over time then I can really start to parse it out. And so yeah, this is not a topic that's straightforward, right? This isn't take this supplement to solve all your problems. But man, if I had someone talking to me about this a decade ago, or even, gosh, as a kid, would have been amazing. I think I would have saved myself so much emotional turmoil over the years just having this taught to me. So I hope this is helpful for you in some ways. Please let me know about that follow-up podcast episode, and if it's something that you all want, I'm absolutely happy to talk about it because I love this stuff. Alrighty, I hope that you have a wonderful day, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare, and we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads, and we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting-edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.